Hey kiddos, and welcome back from camp. So, I know I'm not there, but I figured it's the next best thing, so I'll give you a video of me as I sort of run you through the beginning of the Gospel According to Larry stuff. I'll read a bit more with you, and then I'll have you guys take off and start reading on your own. But there was a little bit more I wanted to read with you and talk about with you before I had you guys sort of take off on your own from there. And then tomorrow I'll have another video of me. I'll be back. But this time I have an assignment we're going to be talking about and some stuff like that to sort of get you going in that direction. Hopefully, by the way, you brought your book. If not, I think I have extra copies. You can talk to the sub, because you're definitely going to need it from today and tomorrow, and so we can try to help you out in that area. If I run out of books, then you're just going to be out of luck. Maybe you have to use the ebook version that I have on my website, and you can try using that one instead. Might not be the best possible option, but I figure it's better than nothing. Also, hopefully your time at camp went well. Hoping I didn't scar any of you too horribly. The things that you see at camp stay at camp. So hopefully you don't try to bring anything back for blackmail, because that would be ridiculous. And finally, if you are wanting to do myth test corrections, those are going to be due Monday. It is still up on my website. You just have to print off the sheet, turn it in along with your corrected ones and your old ones. Each one that you correct does get you a point added back onto your score. So we'll go ahead and sort of take a look at Gospel. I believe we're going to jump back a little bit, sort of make things make a bit more sense for us. So if you look on page 25, that's where I am planning on starting here. It'll be up towards the top. I figure that'll make things a bit easier. Wanted to show you the symbol once again, because it's going to be popping up. I wish I had a better example of it, but apparently I do not. But you have the old school floppy disk, which for the most part is not used on anything anymore except for the save symbol. Anytime that you're wanting to save something in Microsoft or anything like that, that is the symbol that is up there. It's a little floppy disk, which no one uses anymore because we don't even use CD-ROMs, but weird. And then the symbol of peace, because we'll find out more about his Gospel according to Larry's thinking. And then the electronic plug, and then the world, because that's what he's trying to influence. And then, of course, we have the overall peace symbol. So those are all the different parts that we get into with our Gospel according to Larry. Oh, I guess I should probably touch back real quick on some of the previous things. Once again, we had the tree pose when he first meets the author, Janet, and he hands her his thing. He's at the grocery store, and he strikes the tree pose as he hands over his thesis. And we did talk, Walden will play a big role throughout the entire book, because it's one of the big things that what's his name? Josh, our main character, he believes in Walden and Henry David Thoreau and the idea of going back to nature and getting rid of technology, and the irony of the fact that he's trying to get rid of technology yet using technology to do it is not lost on him. More with our Walden and then Henry David Thoreau. If you get bored and you would like to do some more learning, you have this magical machine on your desk, or underneath your desk, the iPad. You could Google any of these things, and that would be a great thing for you to do to find out more background information, but that require learning and thinking and initiative on your own. Speaking of things that you could use your iPad for when you have free time, I would highly recommend, once again, taking a look at Monty Python, the Ministry of Silly Walks. You also have the Dead Parrot. Any number of ones along those lines would definitely be good for you. And if you have not seen Gumby, not nearly as entertaining, but it does go back to that same idea. You'll see the fact that I have Gumbies hanging around my room, not just from this book, but also from in general. Gumby was highly entertaining. And then speaking of highly entertaining, I would also recommend watching Groundhog Day at some point. Be great research for this book, just because it's such a wonderful movie to watch. I guess the symbol again. I have no idea what I was thinking, but it's just beat it into you. So there you go, the symbol. Oh yeah, we had mentioned the fact that when he goes onto his rant, which was way back on page 12, And so he talks about the idea of having technology and how it's being force-fed to us. And I had mentioned the fact that we had Channel 1 News was the company that sort of did things along those lines, and they gave us the televisions that went into our classrooms, and they, in payment for that, they were able to give advertisements to all the students. And so it was a great deal, but the fact that it did sort of force advertising on kids, which may not have been the most morally great thing to do. And there's those TVs that you see that they're now slowly disappearing from our classrooms. You can even look up in the date when I was trying to find pictures to put up there. It was hard to find modern-day pictures of those TVs that are up there. I guess I should have wandered around the school and found some of the ones and taken those pictures, but I was lazy also. Maybe I'll do that and add that for next year's. And this is when he talks about the word napiform, when he was saying all those different things, and turnip-shaped. Hopefully, once again, you've used this to compliment your parents or something along those lines. You talk about napiform just to be entertaining. And this was when he gets into the argument with Beth, and they talk about the fact that he goes to Bloomingdale's. We're going to find out why he goes to Bloomingdale's in this section here coming up. And there's a reason why he goes to Bloomingdale's, and it has nothing to do with shopping. But he does go there, and it makes more sense in a moment. All right, so now let's jump to page 25, and that is where I'm going to start reading with you for a little bit. I'm not going to read with you forever, but just a bit more because I have a few more things I want to talk about. So we're on page 25 up on that top right-hand section. I wasn't sure Miss Phillips's revelation came less from my sales pitch than it did from the fact that it was 10 minutes to 11 and she was dying for a cigarette before her next appointment. I decided to let her off the nicotine hook. I gathered up my things and headed for the door. I've had a soft spot in my heart for Miss Phillips since last year, when I spotted her email address in her office and started up a chatty internet conversation with her as a 40-year-old bachelor from Portland. I don't care what anyone says, I was not going through her desk. After months of quiet online flirtation, I invited her to meet me at the Borders coffee shop, only to watch her from the cookbook section. She waited more than 2 hours and 3 cappuccinos before she went home. That I felt bad about. Miss Phillips was usually tough as nails, and I never thought she'd fall that hard. I decided to skip the rest of the day. The recurring vision of Beth dressed up like Snow White, singing as she swept Todd Terrific's basement was more than I could endure. I grabbed my camera from my locker and opted to check in with my mother instead. When my stepfather visited Mom, he headed for the cemetery. I, who knew her much better than he did, headed for somewhere that captured her spirit more than a pasture full of granite headstones. The makeup counter at Bloomingdale's. And that's why I have this picture up in front of you. And so if you've never been to the makeup counter, it's awful. I'm sure it's a wonderful experience. But this is where his mom used to go. So whenever he wants to sort of connect to his mom, he doesn't go to a graveyard. He goes to Bloomingdale's and then goes to the makeup counter and sits there because that's his best memories of her from when he was a kid. I slogged through the slush, then grabbed the bus to Chestnut Hill. Ever since we lived in the Boston area, my mother had dragged me here once a month. The waft of perfumes hit me like a surge of memories. I plopped down in the tall seat at the Chanel counter. I think it's safe to say I was the only person in that department sitting in the lotus position. If you don't know what the lotus position is, I found a picture of it. Not me, and not a position I could do whatsoever. But you can see down here with the legs, it's when you sort of sit the Indian style on the ground. But you can pop your feet up over each other. That would be the lotus position. Hello, Joshy. How's it going? Marlene, the beauty doctor, has been working here for more than 20 years. With her shiny helmet of dyed black hair and dark eyebrows penciled in for the ones she lost years ago, she was Mom's favorite salesperson. It's slow, so you can sit. If I get a client, you know the drill. I saluted, then leaned back to hang out with Mom. My mother bailed on her wealthy parents' expectations as soon as she hit college. Instead of following in their Wall Street footsteps, she hitchhiked cross-country, worked tirelessly for civil rights, and made some bad choices in men. One thing from her Grosse Pointe background she couldn't walk away from, however, was her fondness for upscale moisturizers and creams. She used to spend hours trying to look like she wore no makeup at all. Must. She experimented with pencils and powders like a mad scientist, but always looked the same to me. I can remember perching on the stool as a preschooler, watching Marlene hand Mom tube after tube of lipstick. Mom would ask me which color I preferred, consider my answer, and then buy whichever one she wanted anyway. I waited till Marlene rang someone up at the other end of the counter before I started talking. Okay, Mom. In a nutshell, Beth is cleaning Todd's basement. Peter is dragging me to another lasagna dinner at Catherine's, and I'm nowhere closer to changing the world. A woman with a leopard print hat eyed me as she walked by. I just feel like I'm waiting for my life to begin, that I've wasted 17 years. Then what? 4 years at Princeton? How does that help move civilization forward? You want to see our deep pore cleaning mask? Marlene inquired. I nodded. Whenever Marlene's boss circled by, I pretended I was a paying customer. If you ask me, you make it too hard on yourself. Stop worrying about civilization. Worry about staying out of trouble, making nice friends. She rubbed the mask onto my face in small circles. I have nice friends, I answered. Well, one nice friend. One nice friend is all you need. Marlene watched her boss get on the escalator, then wiped off my mask with a tissue. Here. She gathered up tiny bottles of free samples, put them in a small bag with handles, and gave it to me. You come on back any time. I could see Marlene eyeing a potential customer hovering over the nail polish. I saluted again and left. In the shoe department, I tried on 4 pairs of sneakers, 3 pairs of loafers, and 5 pairs of boots before the salesperson deserted me. I circled by the makeup counter on my way out. Mom? I asked. A 50-ish woman in fishnets turned around, then went back to what she was doing. Mom, you'll help me, right? With the whole change the world thing? Then I did what I always did when I needed an answer from my mother. I listened for the very next word someone said. A businessman talking on his cell phone provided her response. Yes, he said on the phone, of course I will. My grin spread ear to ear. When I said, Thanks, Mom, the woman in fishnets turned around again. I tipped my woolen hat her way and headed out of the store. This is a common thing that Josh will end up doing throughout the book. Whenever he wants to communicate with his mom and ask questions, he looks for her to give advice from beyond the grave. And so he goes there to the makeup counter, and then he asks a question out loud, and then waits to hear the first response. And whatever the first response is, he assumes that's his mother channeling through to him. Silly? Maybe, but, how much more silly is it than someone who goes to a gravestone and speaks to the dead person there? It's his way of communicating with his mom, and it seems to work for him and bring him happiness, so in that case, you really can't complain too much. All right. Page 30 brings us to our first of all the pictures that we're going to sort of find throughout the book, and these are pictures that Larry posts, and this first one is going to be of his laptop. 31. Peter's girlfriend, Catherine, had a Humpty Dumpty fetish. She collected anything Mr. Dumpty had affixed himself to. I have pictures here that are unfamiliar with Humpty Dumpty. This is Humpty Dumpty. And so apparently she really digs him. Salt and pepper shakers, cookie jars, puzzles, mailboxes, light switches, vases, bookends. You get the idea. Last Christmas, she gave Peter a Humpty Dumpty tie with clumsy Humpty tumbling down the front of it. She gave me a skateboard with Humpty written across it in lightning bolt letters. It frightened me so much I buried it under a stack of newspapers in the garage, then ended up giving it to the kid next door. Catherine was 40 pounds overweight, always smiling like the poster woman for fat, dumb, and happy jeans. Did I just say that? Horrible. Better read Larry's tolerance sermon again. She laughed nervously after everything we said and was putting in so much effort to being liked that once in a while I actually found myself rooting for her. Ah, lasagna, my favorite. Peter dug into the casserole dish like it was the first meal he'd had in months. All right, he and I are both better cooks than Catherine, and besides, she made lasagna every time we came over. Very nice, I said. I told her 50 times I don't eat meat, but somehow that never seemed important enough to register on her radar screen. I filled my plate with lots of garlic bread and tomato sauce. I'm not sure if Peter was really interested in the zany anecdote Catherine filled our airspace with, something about mixed-up files at work and her crazy boss, or if he just pretended she was a client. I don't know how she did it, but the conversation ended up where it always did, at eBay, and all the wonderful Humpty bargains Catherine was bidding on. I excused myself as soon as possible, saying I had lots of homework to do. By the way, eBay has apparently been around for nearly forever. This book took place before you were born, and it's still dealing with eBay. Amazon was also around at that same time. It's also been around forever. As I walked into the cold night air, I banged my hand against the side of my head to empty out the cascade of Catherine's gibberish. By Porter Street, I could almost hear my own thoughts again. It's not like I was trying to walk by Beth's. My feet just somehow ended up there, just in time to catch her running up her driveway. I thought you were dusting Todd's collection of medals tonight. Give it a rest, Josh. I decided to lay off the topic until she felt like talking. We sat on her front steps and watched the flickering Christmas lights that Peterson should have taken down months ago. I hate to admit, you may be right. Todd definitely doesn't appreciate me. That's a giant duh. She shivered. I'll die if I end up being one of those women on talk shows complaining about their lives. Hey, I'll start a fight from the audience so the ratings will be high, I added. I could never have a normal conversation like this with Todd. I don't know why. Let's see. Because he's a moron? Because he thinks memorizing football plays is more important to the planet than physics or kindness? I kept my mouth shut and stared straight ahead at the Peterson's lights. Oh, I almost forgot. I opened my pack and took out the gift bag from Bloomingdale's. You visited your mom today. I wondered where you were, fifth period. Her long fingers removed the item from the tissue paper. Ooh, I like this. She rubbed some moisturizer on her hand. A war erupted inside me. Please try on the lipstick. Don't try on the lipstick. On the one hand, I wanted any excuse to stare at those lips of hers. On the other, I needed to sleep tonight. She wanted to torture me, of course. On went the lipstick. Is it too dark? She asked. I could feel her breath as well as see it. Her lips looked like ripe, juicy plums hanging on a tree. I shrugged and told her it looked okay. I'm not sure about this, she said. Larry's latest sermon really got to me about wasting money on stuff we don't need. Well, it was free, if that makes you feel any better. Oh, as a matter of fact, it does, she said. You want to log on? I followed her down to the basement, which was strewn with clothes and CDs. Why don't you see if Todd will reciprocate? His basement couldn't have been any worse than this. Yeah, right. He's on his way over now. Luckily, there was no chance of anything of Todd actually doing something resembling manual labor, so I had Beth to myself for a few hours. She clicked on her favorite places and pulled up Larry's sermon while she read the latest installment. I picked Magic 8 Ball. If you're unfamiliar with the Magic 8 Ball, this is what it looked like. Really cool old toy where you could shake it around and it had a little ball on one side, a little window, and you could sort of ask it questions and it would sort of tell you information about it. And so it goes all the way back to the Three Stooges, and they had one that had the Magic 8 Ball. And so it was down there where she would use the same things to foretell the future. But that's the Magic 8 Ball. Pretty cool. I have one behind my desk. If you look back there, mine is an orange and yellow, and it's a Simpsons Magic 8 Ball, where it has Simpsons answers as opposed to Magic 8 Ball answers. I picked up her Magic 8 Ball and asked a question. Would Beth like Larry's new sermon? Would it resonate with her? I shook the ball, then turned it over. My sources say no. I may not have magic powers, but I bet you're wrong this time, Mr. 8 Ball. Josh, you've got to see this. I put down the not-so-magic Magic 8 Ball and joined her at the desk. Didn't I tell you? It's like he writes things just for you, no matter what you're thinking. Look! I dragged over a chair and read the latest from Larry. Sermon 97. I've written a lot about the crap we fill our lives with, possessions that tie us down, that only distract us from who we're trying to become. But what about the people we surround ourselves with? Are they people who ignite our passions, who spur us to greater self-mastery? Are your relationships full of meaning, or are you just going through the motions? Don't you want to dig a little deeper, reach another level, or are we all just looking for the easy, the convenient? The people we choose to spend our lives with are the people who share our journey. Are you surrounded by crewmates or pirates who hijack your time? It's spooky, she said. It's so me and Todd. Yeah, I'm sure Larry was thinking of you two when he wrote it, I answered. I'm serious. There's no there. It's over. I shrugged in agreement, but my brain bounced between anticipation and fantasy. Besides, he eats meat. I can smell it on his breath. It's disgusting. She jumped up and put her hands on her hips, determined. Back to more important things. Let's get going on the Larry Club. Hey, I wasn't the one ironing Letterman jackets all night. I took out the folder of notes I'd made the night before. We worked until her father nicely asked me to leave, if standing at the top of the stairs and coughing is considered nice. She gave me her usual, "You're my best friend, so it's so harmless to be so close to you" hug. I just hugged her back in that I'm perfectly content to only be friends way, and then headed home. As I walked down Kimball Street, I thought of all the things I forgot to tell Beth tonight, about the links we could set up from Larry's homepage, about how spring was only a few weeks away, about my conversation with Flip-Off Phillips that morning, and, oh, yeah, Beth, one more thing. Did I forget to mention I was Larry? Yeah, I'm not much of a detail person. Okay, so I strung you along a little. Big deal. I had to make sure you were with me first. So, oh yeah, the Three Stooges, to see if you know the picture of that one, because it's going to pop up. He's going to make a reference to the Three Stooges here coming up in a little bit, so I wanted to make sure you were familiar with them. And so the Three Stooges were the three characters, Moe, Larry, and Curly, and they're the ones who would, the physical humor, slap each other in the head and stuff like that. Once again, you have this wonderful device in front of you. Highly recommend putting in some headphones here, Googling the Three Stooges, watching some YouTube clips of them. Highly entertaining, should be entertaining for a long time. So, here's where I get to leave you and step back. So, surprise, if you didn't know or you're still guessing, Josh is Larry. He is the one that created the whole Gospel According to Larry phenomenon. It just makes a little fun leading into it. Unfortunately, if you read the back of the book, it kind of gives that away. I was just trying to bank on most of you being lazy and not actually reading the back of the book. If you haven't, you can turn to it now. Look at the back of the book and then go, oh, look at that. It tells you right there about this whole God, Josh being Larry thing. Part 2, where it says, "He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loses his life for my sake shall find it." St. Matthew 10:39. And then going to page 41, here's where the real book gets into it, and we sort of find out about him leading the two lives. So page 41 is where I'm going to leave you. Our next checkpoint is going to be on Monday, where we're going to have a quiz, and that quiz is going to cover the book up through page 108. So if you flip to page 108, you'll see it's sort of just like our next little checkpoint. It's a big chunk of the way through. I'm trying to find it in my book, but I'm having a struggle. Page 108. There you go. And so it's before we get to part 3. So if you look at that, it is a wee bit of a chunk. But I have a feeling reading today, tomorrow, and then over the weekend, it flies through pretty quickly. Our biggest issue is, a lot of you guys finishing the book as opposed to you guys not being able to read through enough. It's a quick read. And so that'll be our next checkpoint, that's going to be on Monday. And then I can answer questions for you and help you out and stuff like that from there. Tomorrow I have an assignment, but it's not basic questions. I have a slightly different assignment as we go through and do this one. It's going to involve you posting things to my website and things along those lines. So it'll be a little bit on the different side overall. I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully this worked for you pretty well. Tomorrow I'm not really reading with you. I'm just going to explain some things. But today was my last day of reading with you until next week, where I'll pick up again on part 3 on that page 108. And there's some stuff I want to read. So if you do read ahead and go past page 108, that's fine. But do realize that I will be reading out loud. So we'll be sort of be reading together a little bit as we go through and do that. Hopefully it worked well. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys later, and hopefully things have gone well. Thanks.